Hello, people. Welcome to the latest edition of the Winner's Circle presented by Naira and Naira Bets, the official online betting partner of the Belmont Stakes and Saratoga Racecourse, which I was at over the weekend. I'm Bram Weinstein. That's Dan Torgman. We were on separate tours for once. We were not having the cogent paths that we normally have. You were at Monmouth for what was one of the craziest finishes we've seen in a long time at the Haskell, which we'll talk about in a minute. I was at Saratoga for opening weekend, took my kids there. And I'll tell you some stories of how they're hooked for life thanks to the gods of horse racing, shining down some karma on my son as he's just a winner in everything he bets on day one. But let's start with you because you were at Monmouth. And maybe we should start with showing the stretch, which I think most everybody who's watching this probably saw by now. And the good news is that if you haven't seen this, here's the thing you should know. And it's no spoiler. Everybody's okay. And I think that's the most important thing to start with. But here was the stretch call of the Haskell Stakes.
Midnight Bourbon with a quarter of a mile to go, confronted by Hot Rod Charlie on the outside, Mandaloon Pink Cap following C at the rail. Here comes Hot Rod Charlie unleashed, and Mandaloon comes through with a smart move, and these two will fight it out. Hot Rod Charlie, taking and losing the rider was Midnight Bourbon in mid-stretch. It's Hot Rod Charlie, Mandaloon, Hot Rod Charlie. Here's the line. Photo finish in the TVG.com Haskell. Very close.
Okay, so wild finish there. All right, let's get into what are a ton of issues here. All right, number one, Hot Rod Charlie was DQ'd for that. And I know we just watched that at full speed and one time. And in real time when I saw it, Dan, I didn't think he did anything wrong. And then even in watching on replay, I feel like an accident occurred and it was not infraction worthy, but the outcome is the outcome. So let's start with the DQ first. Do you think they did the right thing?
I do. I thought it was the right call. When I saw the pan view, and not only was I watching it live, we were streaming live on Saturday with our Breeders' Cup live show. We were watching the race. Ren and I were watching the race with Vic Stauffer, who, of course, is a longtime race caller. He's also a steward, or he was a steward at least. And so he had history in being in the booth, reviewing incidents like this. So he was giving us live real-time analysis, which was actually really helpful in the moment. And I think once you see this head-on, which we're actually looking at right now, you kind of get a better sense for what happened and why they had to DQ. And it's because, quite simply, Flavien Prat and Hot Rod Charlie cross over into Midnight Bourbon's path before they're completely clear. And so I think a couple of things are happening there. One, I think the horse's momentum naturally, as you always see when horses kind of clear with that sort of move, bringing them toward the rail, toward the inside, but also tactically, Flavien Prat is doing what most jockeys do in that situation. He wants to make sure that his horse, that he's rallying with all this momentum, realizes the job's not done. You have a horse to your inside. Stay competitive. Here's the horse. Go eye to eye with them and then go past them. And so I think the move was made. I don't think it was made with any malicious intent, but unfortunately, once you crossed into the path of Midnight Bourbon without full clearance, and you had, heel clipping essentially, and which is, for those unfamiliar with it, essentially the horse's hooves, and legs touched each other, which caused the fall. That's almost always automatic grounds for disqualification.
Okay, because sometimes I see this in hockey too, and it annoys me that the outcome then becomes the impetus for the punishment. So in that case, if someone gets a high sticking call and blood is somehow drawn, it's a much larger penalty, even if the infraction is the same. And in watching this again, and I agree with you, when you look at the head on, it looks far worse than it does from the real time. I'm with you though. I think all Prat did was what any jockey at a race like this normally would do. Once he had the advantage, he crossed over to ensure that Midnight Bourbon was not going to have a second chance to win. And it felt more like an accident. And maybe did he mistime this by a millisecond? Sure. Right. Okay. Yep. Sure. There was no intent there. And I guess the outcome is all we can go off of, right? Because The horse did clip heels. He did fall. There was a near disaster. Fortunately, Lopez is fine. Fortunately, it looks like the horse is fine. But in the end, I keep going back to the outcome dictated a punishment when I'm not sure that it was warranted. But I'm with you here, and I'm not going to argue with a former steward telling me that I'm wrong. I just keep looking at it going, this guy, like, I go back to the Derby a couple of years ago, and I go, that move why am I forgetting his name? That he made was ridiculous. Yeah, it was ridiculous, right? Like that was ridiculous, and it had to be called. In this case, this was not a ridiculous move. Maybe it was mistimed by a millisecond.
Yeah, so you touched on something there. You mentioned intent. So generally speaking, and it's hard to say generally speaking because each jurisdiction, each track kind of makes its own decisions based on its own rule book. But generally speaking, I think the barometer is not about, rarely comes down to intent. Intent is almost out the window. It really does come down to what was the result of the action. And if that action cost a placing to the horse that it impacted adversely, in this case, Midnight Bourbon, then there would be, action taken. And so in this case, I think clearly, right? I mean, the horse Midnight Bourbon was probably going to finish third in the race. Worst case scenario, maybe finish fourth if he backed up a little bit more. When he went down and he lost the jockey and everything like that, he automatically is a DNF. I mean, he didn't finish the race, and so he's essentially last. So when you're trying to decide like how much, how badly was this horse hurt, oftentimes what the stewards are looking at is, did this action cost that horse a placing? And I think undeniably it obviously cost this horse a placing. And so not only was Hot Rod Charlie disqualified, which is just a completely different story, which is like just heartbreaking for the, the connections. And we all love the story of Hot Rod Charlie, but he was placed last. So not only third or fourth or wherever you want to put him based on like, hey, this is the punishment that fits the crime. He was placed last. So just a really tough day for that team. And, there was just a lot of buzz, which I'm sure, you may want to get into here just in terms of like, could this been avoided specifically when we look at the new whip rule that's been instituted at Monmouth?
Well, I want to get into that now because I've seen a lot of things written about it that maybe things would have been different if the whip was allowed to be used at this, because it would have altered whatever needed to be altered to avoid these types of moves. And in my opinion, I would go with, I don't think anybody who's thinking about that at that moment when it's happening. That said, I understand a little bit. I understand a little bit where people are coming from if they're saying, like when you have this tool at your disposal and it's taken away from you, for whatever reason, it's taken away from them, but it will alter some moments. And this one had an outcome that some people are trying to argue may not have occurred this way had that tool been allowed to be used. I'm not totally buying that, but I get where they're coming from.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think immediately following the race, my instinct was maybe like if Hot Rod Charlie was actually lugging in and was tiring and that movement is what caused the fall. I think, and that initially, not that I thought he was tiring, but I just thought his momentum was taking him there and that it wasn't drastic enough to where if Pratt had the whip, he would have necessarily kind of whipped Hot Rod Charlie with the left hand to straighten him out at that moment. I think if anything, you often see in those instances, jockeys hitting right-handed. So if anything, if he had a whip and he was using it liberally in that moment, he may have been using it right-handed to actually get the horse to move over and again to eye Mandaloon and to get him more aggressive and more competitive toward his inside. I don't know that Pratt's natural instinct would have made him hit left-handed to put the horse back outside. And so, there's a comment that we have here. He said the jockey who rode Hot Rod Charlie said if he had used the left far back, they would have penalized. So essentially saying if he would have used the whip, he would have been penalized. Here's the thing. There is a clause, or at least the wording within the rule at Monmouth that says for safety reasons, you are allowed to use the whip. Now, we haven't seen it play out in an instance like this where it's been used in a big spot and where the jockey claimed, look, I needed to do this for safety reasons. So it would have been interesting to see. So he could have used the whip. He could have actually used the left-handed whip. If Pratt's making the case, well, look, I didn't use it because out of fear of being penalized. Then that's another story, and that's an interesting story. But look, I think immediately my initial reaction was maybe that had some direct effect. I saw John Velasquez kind of make that argument on Sunday, and there was a whole big Twitter war about it. But I think the more time that goes on, I really do think it was simply a matter of Pratt making the move at the time he did, and the horse's momentum just taking him there. And I don't know that the whip in that instance would have necessarily stopped that momentum, or that Pratt would have wanted to stop that momentum from going inside, because I think that's where you wanted to be in eyeing up the horse to your inside.
Yeah, I mean, here's the bottom line: like that outcome. What happened the other day? These are the experiences that are tough for this sport. When nobody wants these things to go down like this, where you're making a choice about a contender, whether he should place or not. We had a scary incident with a horse that is a major stakes contender going down. Fortunately, it looks like he's okay. And we're sitting here talking about rule changes and how that would have and could have potentially affected this type of stuff. This is a quagmire. I mean, honestly, it really is. It doesn't take away from the fact that I thought Hot Rod Charlie's finish was incredible. Mandaloon's finish was the second time now from the Preakness to here where I'm like, that horse is better than I think he is, right? He's consistently proving everybody wrong. And on Hot Rod Charlie, I would just say this too. I don't know how much more he's going to run, but like he feels very gun runner to me. Like his best is still yet to come. Like I don't know if we've seen, if he gets placed right, he races into the 4-year-old season, that horse is going to swoop up and kill a lot of stakes races. That's what I think. I mean, that's what I see with him. He's got the same kind of trajectory where there's been he's either run into the wrong horse or he's been way too close, but he's a fighter and he's kind of right there. And we'll see what next year looks like for him.
Yeah, Hot Rod Charlie's a tough horse. I mean, he's put together quite the campaign. I actually was against him going into the race in terms of a win candidate, because I thought that he'd run his best when he was on the lead. Like the Belmont Stakes, he was on the lead. The Louisiana Derby, he was on the lead. And I thought I'd seen him hang and kind of not go by horses a couple of times. The Robert B. Lewis, he was third to Medina Spirit. Again, in the Derby, he had, relatively speaking, a pretty good trip and couldn't get up and couldn't win in the Kentucky Derby. So I thought he was going to be off the pace, because you had Following C, who was going to be the clear pace setter, who, by the way, also ran a really nice race in his first race stretching out, his first time in Greatest Stakes Company. He ended up finishing second after the DQ. I thought he ran an honest race, but of course, a lot of that got lost in the shuffle due to what happened. And also, let's not forget, Midnight Bourbon also ran a really gutsy race. He was up close with the pace, and he was there for a long time. I think ultimately, we might be seeing like Midnight Bourbon maybe just a cut below the top of this class. But he's going to be a nice horse moving forward as well. And just glad that he came out of it okay, and that Paco Lopez, as you mentioned at the top, also came out of it relatively unscathed.
Last thing on the rule change, I'll let you weigh in on this too with the whip rule. It's the same for everybody. So in those cases, while we could sit here and argue in hindsight, would this have made a difference? It's not like it affected any one particular person. It affects everybody. They know that going in, and you have to adjust. And so this argument of what would it have been like if we did this, it's in the past, it's done. They've made this change. It affects everybody the exact same way. You're going to have to adjust. That's all. That's all I would say about it. You have to adjust to it. This is what they've decided the rules of the game are now. And there's no sense in talking about the way it would have been, because it wasn't going to be that way. You need to adjust. Yeah.
No, I think you make a good point. And look, Monmouth has caught a lot of grief this meet, and it hurts me because I love Monmouth Park. We've spoken before on this show, and I've told you I have very fond memories of Monmouth Park. One of the first jobs I ever had, and the first job I ever had in racing, was working, concessions at Monmouth Park. I love that track. They are trying something that, in their minds, they believe will result in some sort of incremental change as it relates to public perception on using whips. And you got to give credit for someone in this industry actually stepping up and trying things. Now, you take a step back from it, there's been a lot of blowback specifically from jockeys, and I totally respect the opinions of the jockeys. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to get everyone in one room and not only come up with rules that people are satisfied with at Monmouth Park, but nationally, you got to make these rules uniform, because we may have the same incident, God forbid, happen a week from now, where we see what we saw this past weekend, and A, something worse can happen, or B, everyone comes out okay, but we have a different call by the stewards. So, we've got to get on the same page and just really create a rule book that the fans and the bettors can follow.
I agree. All right. That was your day, Monmouth. I had a day at Saratoga opening weekend, which I'll get to in a moment. Bet your favorite tracks online with Naira Bets, available nationwide in 30 states. Naira Bets offers best-in-class HD live video and replays, online contests to compete with other Naira Bets players, exclusive promotions to give back more, and expert picks and analysis. With an easy-to-use, free-to-download app, betting horse racing online has never been easier and safer. Sign up for Naira Bets now to earn a $200 sign-up bonus with promo code ABR200. And welcome back to the Winner's Circle. I'm Bram Weinstein with Dan Torgman. So Dan was at Monmouth for the Haskell and the day there. I was with my family at Saratoga. We did a vacation. We did a loop of New York. We went to Legoland, Dan, with and there were previews going on. I know you're not going, no kids yet, so that was my world. And then we went up to the Lake Placid area. We did that. Came back down to the Lake George area, which is near Saratoga, and then I decided I'm going to dress my kids up, and if I'm going to give them one of their first like real immersive experiences with racing, because they're going to have to like the things I like, I'm their father. I was going to take them there and get them dressed up and see the festival that happens there. And you know, the horse racing gods decided to smile on us because my son decided he didn't want to bet on his own. He just said, "Dad, you pick, right? And I'll bet with you," you know, because he can't bet anyway. But I like found that inspiring. And we bet on 3 races together and we won 2 of them. So the karma of the first timers to hook them in occurred in my life. It did.
It always works that way somehow. I don't know how the racing and betting gods do it, but your first day at the track, probably going to win. You're going to win. And now hopefully, you know, it's in the blood. Hopefully not to the extreme. I'm hoping he's not like, you know, patting you on the shoulder later today and be like, "Hey, look, we should stay up late night and bet Australia tonight," because that might be a bad sign.
Got a really good one in the second at Aqueduct today.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you're like, wait, Aqueduct's not even running. He's like, whatever, let's just bet on it. Let's just bet, you know? Like, yeah, no, look, that's really cool. You know, both of us, I know, just from chatting with you, I know your love for this came from your dad. So did mine. And so, like, it's really, I'm happy for you that you got to experience it and experience it at Saratoga, which is, I mean, like, you really are starting at the top. Like, it's going to be difficult to replicate that at other tracks because you went, you know, to pretty much the best track.
Well,
but there are
decided, I'm like, this is what I decided. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, let's do this right. Let's not introduce them to something else. Let me go take them somewhere where the experience is going to be like, oh my, it's like this. And to me, the 2 places that are that outside of like a Triple Crown day, you know, is Saratoga and Del Mar. That if we're going to do that, I'm going to show them what the best of this looks like from just from a day experience, a lifestyle experience. These are the 2 places I want them to do it. So I took advantage of the opportunity. And our boy Steven, of course, gave me ridiculous tickets to it. So that didn't hurt either, that we're sitting like in box seats overlooking the finish line. Like, that also did not hurt. So we had the whole kind of experience there set up for us, but it was the right thing to do. And I'm actually going to write a piece for ABR about my experience with my kids at Saratoga and why I felt it was important for me to make that a first real experience. Like, they'd been with me before, but I decided to make a big deal out of this, and Saratoga delivered. It did.
That's awesome. Looking forward to reading that. And for those who haven't been to Saratoga and maybe a little hesitant to even go with your kids because you're thinking, hey, you know, it's just gambling and drinking and all that, there's really so much more, and it has sort of a festival carnival type atmosphere where you got all, you know, you got food trucks, you've got cotton candy, you got lemonade, you've got funnel cake. I mean, you've got like everything you need. The mac and cheese truck is you know, everyone goes nuts for. I don't know. Did you get any mac and cheese or?
I did not do the mac and cheese truck. We did about everything else, you know, because like, you know, when you're entertaining a 12 and an 8-year-old, it's an ongoing experience. No one's sitting there just reading the form with me. It doesn't go that way.
No, it's really cool, man. And it's funny that you mentioned the whole, like, you know, let me start off like with something really, really good to try to try to hook them, because I remember when my wife and I were dating, you know, years ago now, I kind of tricked her into a trip out to California when Del Mar was open. And I put together this itinerary with a bunch of other things. And then one day I just sprung on her like, oh, by the way, there's a racetrack here, Del Mar. Like, we should go check this out. And she was like, all right, I'll go check it out. And like, you know, knowing like that's like the ultimate experience, you know, you know, if you're in San Diego in August, we went, and then that was the height. And that, you know, kind of at least kind of brought her. It completely blew her mind. Like wow, this is what horse racing is. This is phenomenal. Like I want to do more of this. Now I've given her other experiences since then at the racetrack that haven't been as pleasant. But if it were not for that first one, she probably wouldn't come all the other times we went. So
that's right. That's right. This is to show you. These are my people. This is why I go here. Everyone dresses up. There's no testosterone. There's no fighting. Everybody's in a good mood. Like this is, and I want you, and you can feel like, especially at Saratoga, you can feel like you step back in time. Like when you go there, you walk into this facility, and it might as well be 1923 there. You know, it's like wild, like how it goes. All right, let me get to one of the major races. We had the first major stakes of the weekend, of opening weekend at the Spa, and it was the Diana. So check out the stretch call here from the Diana.
For the far turn, Summer Romance continues to lead here. It is Summer Romance now by a length and a half. Vigilante's Way in second. Pocket Square is down on the inside in third. Harvey's Little Girl on the far outside in fourth. Then comes Altica as the field comes into the stretch. It is Summer Romance trying to go wire to wire. Harvey's Little Girl on the outside is Altica. Down towards the rail is Pocket Square. Summer Romance. Here's stablemate Altica driving up on the outside. Altica has taken over. Summer Romance is second. It is Altica and Manny Franco to win the Diana Stakes.
All right, a couple things off of this. Chad Brown has owned this race. Obviously, turf course up there. He was going for a 6 straight, did not happen. Godolphin was 1-2, and of all the shows we've been doing over the last few months, every single person that brings them up says this is the year that they're just going to dominate. And this was one of those moments. So I think we're looking at the summer of a Godolphin after 1-2 at the Diana.
Yeah, I mean, both of these horses, right? I mean, not only Altica, but Summer Romance, absolutely spectacular. The thing that was interesting here for me is I wanted to see Altica do it without the same exact pace setup in the game stakes on Belmont Stakes Day. You know, she got a really nice, like, 23-2 opening quarter and 46-4 early fast, early splits that were fast. They even went like, I think 3/4 and 110 and change. So they went fast enough early to where when she closed, I was like, you know what, but she got a great setup. But still, she made the biggest move from off the pace. She backed that up in a big way because they weren't going nearly as fast on Saturday. And she still kind of made it look really easy. So Altica specifically is a horse that I'm super excited about. Her turn of foot is just ridiculous. I mean, she actually, like, you could visually just see her like accelerating at a rate that's so much faster than the horses around her. The horses around her on Saturday were really good horses. Like you mentioned, the Chad Brown horses, like these are the top of the top grass horses in the country in that division. And she made them look like they were standing still. So I am like really falling hard for Altica. And I think Summer Romance is a really fun horse. If she ever gets a race without Altica in it, she might also win one here.
Yeah, she might. All right. One other issue from Saratoga I want to get you to weigh in on, which is Kenny McPeak, is his barn and some others as well. But his barn is truly affected up there. They've gone into quarantine for like 3 weeks, which takes away essentially half of the racing season up at Saratoga. So what do you make of what's going on there? And what are some options for him moving forward?
Yeah, it's a tough break because if you haven't heard the news, I mean, basically, there's another trainer in the barn had a horse come back positive, and so the whole barn is in quarantine now. You mentioned, like, you think of horses like Swiss Skydiver in the McPeak barn, who are going to be running in the next couple of weeks, who now are have to come up with alternative plans. I mean, the good news is there's 8 weeks to the meet. There are some races toward the back end of the meet. Where you would imagine, Kenny will have some opportunities to run his horses, but it's just a tough break. And it's one of those things. I mean, there's no other option. I mean, that's the rule. And obviously for in the interest of not exacerbating the situation, you've got to do it. But you just feel for Kenny. And I mean, not that necessarily makes it worse, but I'm sure, naturally your mind goes there. It wasn't even one of his horses initially who had tested positive for this virus. So it's like, he's in just sort of the wrong place at the worst possible time to kick off, the meet that he and so many other trainers look forward to all year.
Yep. You mentioned Del Mar earlier. We'll get to that next, but first check this out.
No sport in the world brings the wins home like racing. It's one-of-a-kind, high-speed, high-stakes action, and Naira Bets takes you there. Place your bets and watch the races live from anywhere. With Naira Bets, make easy, secure deposits and promotions every day to earn reward points or cash. Download the Naira Bets app or visit NairaBets.com.
And welcome back to the Winner Circle. I'm Bram Weinstein with Dan Torgman. We're presented by Naira and Naira Bets. All right, let's go across the country now. We did Monmouth, we had Saratoga. Now we have Del Mar, which opened up last week. First major race of their meet is the San Diego Handicap. So check out the stretch call of that.
San Diego and rushing now, nice and relaxed on the lead, has it by a neck. Express Trainers second and Momosa on the far side. Royal Ship just tracking them down at the rail fourth. Tripoli's in there as well. In behind Tripoli, Magic on tap. No more than 3 lengths covering all these runners. Kiss Today Goodbye's in there too. And last of all, Sheriff Brown coming to the top of the lane. Rushy at the rail. Express Train up alongside. Momosa makes it 3 in a line. Royal Ship just waiting for room in the red cap. Can he find somewhere to run? Tripoli's on the outside of that. Top of the lane now, and Rushy's in deep water. Express Train gets the lead. Royal Ship sees a hole at the rail, and here comes Royal Ship in the red cap at the rail. Express Train running a big one. Tripoli running a huge one on the outside. Any one of the 3. Tripoli on the outside. Express Train and Royal Ship. Express Train, the more they asked, the more he gave. And Express Train won to Tripoli. Royal Ship. Mimosa was fourth.
All right, great stretch call there. John Sheriff's the trainer on Express Trains. Never won the Pacific Classic before. Asked if he's going to go into it after this. He said, of course, he is now. He got a real shot. That was a gutsy performance down the stretch there, Dan.
Yeah, look, Express Train, you've been knocking on the doors. And then, I mean, this year hadn't been able to break through with that big rated stakes win. This was it. I will say the horse does love Del Mar. Won his first career race at Del Mar, won another race there last year, and then now adding this to the resume at Del Mar. I personally think he's still probably a cup below, the top tier. Again, in this classic division, you got Maxfield and Essential Quality. And I mean, I don't think he's at that level, but he could be heading in the right direction. And it's good to see him at least get the edge over some of those California rivals, including Royal Ship, who's a horse that he finished behind before. Royal Ship sort of disappointing in that race. I mean, had a great trip, no excuses, just kind of came up empty late.
He's one of those Express Train now that we get around to the Pacific Classic, assuming he's riding in it, considering the field that he's in, the price probably isn't going to be right for him. I mean, that's because off of this, now he's down to what? 5-2, 3-1, something like that. And to your point, like Maxfield's is a killer, right?
Yeah.
And we know what Essential Quality is. So it's like, this is one of those where I watch this and I go, if you give him to me again at 7-1 or 8-1, I would probably take a shot.
Yeah.
But because of what he did, the number's gonna end up being too low, and I'll be off him. I already know how this is gonna go.
Well, let's see. I mean, look, we always try to speculate as to what price we're going to get, but it's so hard this far out. Let's see how these races shape up over the next couple of months. Not only the Pacific Classic and the other big stakes races, the Win and You're In races for the Breeders' Cup, but also once we get to the Breeders' Cup, I mean, there's so much that could happen between now and then. So let's see how those races shape up.
All right, last thing for today, and William just keeps over and over.
Oh, he's.
We
were going to mention it. We were going to mention it.
This is in my backyard. I live right outside of Washington, D.C. York, Virginia is not too far away. I would love to take a little trek down there. In fact, I could think of a very good time to do that because I'll be down for the start of Washington football's training camp in Richmond in about a week and a half. Can't believe football season is already here, but it is. So I'm about a week and 9 days away from going down there. So I feel like that weekend might be the right time to slip by and go see old Colonial Downs. So Dad, would you like to give a nice shout out to Colonial Downs, which opens up?
Absolutely. We had Beamy on, Jason Beam on a few weeks back. He'll be calling the races there this summer again. And we also had, we talked about Jessica Paquette calling races out at Sam Houston a couple of weeks back. She's there involved in a lot of the marketing and also some of the handicapping as an analyst there. So good people who are really just passionate about the sport. And it's kind of like it's a real sort of family type atmosphere there. If you're anywhere near there, New Kent, York, Virginia area, just, go to the track. It's a great experience. When I worked in Norfolk, Virginia for a while, when I was in TV down there, and made it a point to go every chance I could. And so it's just a great track, great experience. They kick off here today, and just wish them the best of luck throughout the meet.
We just got your entire resume. Let's see. Concessions at Monmouth Park, television in Norfolk, Virginia.
It's been a long hard road. It was actually funny. We were just watching the replay of some of the race. I forget which race it was just a few moments ago. That but I was just thinking, like, I remember being in high school and in college and like watching stuff like racing footage and thinking like it'd be so cool to like do something where I was some sort of analyst or I was talking about horses or horse racing. And like, it's just cool, like just to sit here with you as we do every Monday and just kind of shoot the breeze, talk about horse racing, watch horse races. It was a moment where like, yeah, as I'm literally running through, like, I worked at the concession stands there, like I would have done anything to do, something in racing back then. And then I moved away from it. I worked in TV for so long, but here we are like 20 years later and doing some really fun stuff here. So just cool. Just had a moment that I was just thinking about that. So interesting you brought it up.
I'll share with you then. My first job, which is beyond cliche, was at a bagel shop about a mile from my house. My second job was at something that doesn't exist anymore because that's how old I am, a video store where you had to go in and rent videos because there was no such thing as Netflix or the internet for that matter. You could stream things. You had to like actually go rent a video. And if you didn't get there in time, you might not get it. And then you'd have to pick something else. And the name of the store was Video Nights. And I had to, I had to answer the phone this way: Video Nights, Lord Bram speaking. And my friends, loved this and would just call incessantly, to get me to say that and then just laugh or ask some dumb question. But the phone would just ring off the hook to get me to have to answer the phone and say, Lord Bram speaking.
That's spectacular. That's spectacular. And again, I was just walking by. Like there was apparently like an old Blockbuster here that they converted into something else. But it's funny, you could tell it was an old Blockbuster because they kept like, somehow they had some signs and stickers outside that were still in that same blue and yellow color and theme. And so I was like, oh, wow, like this used to be a Blockbuster here. Now it's whatever it is. But yeah, man, video stores, man, we every Friday night, right? Pick up like 3 or 4 VHS tapes and go home and make it a weekend.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Lord Bram, that might be my first horse out of my stable.
I love it.
All right, that'll do it for us this week. I'll talk to you next Monday, Dan. We're presented by America's Day at the Races, the official live broadcast partner of Aqueduct Racetrack, Belmont Park, Saratoga Racecourse, and tracks nationwide. For Bram, I'm Dan. This has been the Winner's Circle. We'll see you next Monday.